$109.9 billion. $122 was the price of Brent crude, jumping to a 4-year high. It rose due to concerns the US-Iran war could further escalate and disrupt global oil supply. Reuters energy editor Dmitry Zhdanikov.
The idea that somehow, somewhere, a consumer in the world will be insulated from the impact of this crisis is completely false. Everywhere in the world, in Asia and Europe, even in the United States, which produces a lot of oil of its own, consumers will feel a massive impact.
6% was how much Meta shares fell by. That after it raised its annual capital spending forecast by $10 billion as it invests heavily in AI infrastructure. The Facebook parent now projects capital expenditure between $125 billion and $145 billion this year. That's even as it grapples with possible losses from a global youth social media backlash. It also warned that legal and regulatory blowback in the EU and the US could impact business. 14% was the unexpected fall in first quarter operating profit at Volkswagen to $2.9 billion. The group said it must overhaul its business as tariffs, geopolitical shocks, and weak car demand hit the auto industry. Around 50,000 jobs are already due to be cut across the group in Germany by 2030. $1.64 billion was the first quarter group revenue at Prada, excluding Versace. It was driven by double-digit sales growth in the Americas, which offset weakness in Europe and the Middle East. Prada acquired Versace last year and is in the process of integrating and relaunching the brand. Versace contributed $167 million to quarterly revenues.
So was there any connection? Did you feel any pressure? Was the timing at all, as a result of White House pressure or what happened on Saturday night?
No, this was a decision that we made inside this building based on where we were in the enforcement matter. There was no pressure from the outside. There was no suggestion from the outside. There was no call for agency action from the outside. This was based on our assessment of where we were. With respect to President Trump, obviously he has every right, First Amendment right, to express his position on this. One of the great things about President Trump is he's very transparent. He has told publicly his position. He has every right to make the decisions that he's made, to make the public calls that he's made. Same with the First Lady. And there's a lot of people out there that agree with them.
And that'll be by truckload, and the delivery cost from Lake City is where we get it, will be reflected in the transportation.
While Hodges says his larger acreage offers some flexibility to absorb costs, smaller operations feel the strain more quickly. One such operation is Florida Georgia Citrus in Monticello, where citrus farmer Dale Aldrich manages around 70 acres. Aldrich said the trouble started when global tensions escalated.
So it didn't take long. All of a sudden, price of fuel went up $2 a gallon, which is significant. A tractor will hold 80 gallons. So all of a sudden, that's $160 more.
Affordable supply of food.
They're usually found as a crusty growth on rocks and trees, but scientists think lichens may have a use beyond this earth. At Imperial College London, they're engineering fast-growing synthetic lichens that use carbon dioxide and light to help make useful chemicals. In nature, lichens are hardy partnerships between fungi and photosynthetic algae or cyanobacteria. Professor of Engineering Biology Rodrigo Ledesma Amaro explains.
So it's a symbiotic relationship between a photosynthetic organism, a cyanobacteria or algae, and fungus. And they work together. One gets the CO2 and light, transform it into nutrients, and the fungus use those nutrients to create the structure and the house where they live.
The synthetic lichens are in inspired by that natural process, but grow much faster than natural lichens. The lab-grown systems pair
sea lion can grow to about 10 feet and almost 1,200 pounds. The average size of an adult male California sea lion, for comparison, is about 7.5 feet and maybe 700 or 800 pounds.
And I'm so honored to share it with the Tooch behind me, and that we spend far too much time together, and now we're going to spend even more time together.
100 Israeli strikes hit Lebanon, including the capital, within 10 minutes. For many Lebanese, the images were not just of a new war. They were a memory of the past.
مشهدين مرقوا قطاع كثير كبار. مشهد انفجار 4 المرة والمشهد ب8 نيسان اللي مضي هيدا. يعني هودي تقريبا استعادة كل مشهد الحرب الأهلية بثواني.
Ziad Saab fought in Lebanon's civil war alongside the Communist Party. He's the head of Fighters for Peace, an NGO founded by former fighters. In his archive, he found a handwritten letter from 1981 detailing Israeli bombardment on villages in Lebanon's south, villages that have recently been struck again. Each new crisis has posed the same question, whether Lebanon's divisions, never fully resolved after the civil war, could once again turn violent.
للأسف إنه خلصت الحرب وهذه الحرب ما انتقلت إلى محل آخر، بس الحقيقة إنه ما انتقلت الحرب بعد الشعور إنه ما زالت قائمة. هذا شعور موجود سببه لأنه ما صار في حل حقيقي، ما صار في مصالحة حقيقية.
A recent temporary ceasefire brought some respite after weeks of Israeli strikes that killed nearly 2,300 people. The diplomats say the deal leaves key issues unaddressed. It doesn't require Israeli troops to withdraw from Lebanon, and it doesn't explicitly require Hezbollah to disarm. Rafik Bazerji was a senior figure in a Lebanese Christian armed group during the civil war. He says deals that leave Lebanon with unfinished business, like the current ceasefire, are doomed to reignite internal tensions.
شوفي مزبوط الشعب اللبناني واعي كتير وقتلان هم بالحرب كتير لأنه بيعرف شو ذيولها وشو متاعبها وشو أبعادها. finalement si on peut éviter on évite mais إذا بتوصل الموس لدقنا كمان منا نحن مكسر عصا.
He talks about the Taif Agreement, which ended the civil war but was never fully implemented, and the government's 2025 plan to disarm Hezbollah, which was cut short by the new war. Rafik says he sees a young generation in Lebanon that could take up arms.
إنه قديش نحن كنا بأيامنا متعصبين وكنا متحمسين تنحارب، عم شوف اليوم جيل جديد بخوف. يعني نحن أولاد بالنسبة لهم، بتطلع فيهم بكي أطول منا وأعرض منا وأقوى منا وفهمانين أكثر منا وبيفهموا المعلوماتية أكثر منا ومستعدين هني كمان ما يتنازلوا عن هالبلد.
Patrick agrees. He says divisions among Lebanese youth could make a new internal conflict possible.
Of course it can happen again. I'm sure if you go to universities today and you tell them carry guns and go and fire at your political opponents or someone you don't like, they will do it.
Now, 51 years after Lebanon's civil war began, survivors like Rafik, Ziad, and Patrick say the country has never dealt with what caused it. And without that reckoning, they say, history could happen again.
ما تكرروا تجربتنا لأنه رح تتفاجئوا لوين رح تاخذكم الحرب. رح تاخذكم بعكس تماما ما بتعتقدوا إنه أنتم رايحين لها. يعني إذا كنتم معتقدين إنه هيدي رح يصير بلد أحسن، نحن طحبشنا للبلد، نحن خزقنا للبلد.
It feels like home. it feels oddly familiar, like strangely fantasy brought to life. I just want to justify that.
When I walked in it, I felt like it was a time machine to my childhood. You know, we watched it every day after school. Also, it's like interactive art to me. And also, I was concerned that someone might tear out what HGTV did or tear the house down completely. And I know how much it means to so many people. And so the only way I could control that was to buy it.
I really like it a lot. I heard that today is the first day of the newly upgraded area reopening, so I quickly grabbed a ticket for today and came here very happily. I've never gotten up this early to come to an amusement park in the morning. I did it just to see Labubu. I got up very early and came straight here.
I came here with my child. She came once before to check things out, and I felt this place is really suitable for children, and for me too, to be honest, mostly for me. So I brought my child along this time. There are 4 of us in total, my child, my parents and me. Right now I'm lining up for the Labubu show. They're on their way here and should arrive soon. My child really likes Labubu as well. Whenever he sees Labubu blind boxes, he always asks me to buy them for him.
At Bindal silk mills in western India, brightly printed polyester fabric rolls off machines. The finished fibers are stacked high in carts and sorted by hand. Inside the mills, workers stir large vats of chemical dye and feed fabric for folding and winding machines. The factory in Surat produces printed and dyed polyester fabrics for some of the world's biggest retailers, including H&M, Target, and Walmart. But behind this busy scene,
cost of production. So due to this both scenarios, we are not able to actually meet the demands of the global's orders.
Polyester, made from oil-based chemicals, makes up 59% of global fiber production. One major Indian producer, Filatex, says it's now paying nearly 30% more for its key raw materials. That's why in Surat's weaving district, many looms have gone quiet. At Radesham Textile, half of the 200 looms sit idle. Kaushik Dudat is the owner.
Before the war, we used to produce at least 11,000 yards of polyester fabric per day, which has come down to 3,800 to 4,300 yards. Because if we want to produce more, we will have to purchase more raw materials, and we will not be able to buy it at the present rates, as the finished fabric will not be sold at a profitable rate that can benefit us.
Research group Wood Mackenzie says Indian prices for fiber rose by around a quarter over the month from late February. For now, some retailers will be protected from that by earlier purchases and the use of recycled polyester. Clothing giant H&M said it hadn't seen any big impact yet. But if factory prices stay high, shoppers could soon find their fast fashion getting more expensive.
This is Reuters. A senior official in U.S. President Donald Trump's administration said on Thursday that the current U.S.-Iran ceasefire, which began in early April, terminated hostilities between the two sides for the purposes of an approaching congressional war powers deadline. Trump faced a Friday deadline to end the Iran war or make the case to Congress for extending it, as the start of fighting in the Middle East passed the 2-month mark. Under the 1973 War Powers Resolution, the president can wage military action for only 60 days before ending it. The Iran conflict began on February 28th, when Israel and the United States began airstrikes on Iran. Trump formally notified Congress of the conflict 48 hours later, starting the 60-day deadline clock that ends May 1st. Democrats have also tried repeatedly to pass resolutions to force Trump to withdraw U.S. forces or obtain congressional authorization, which Republicans have voted down almost unanimously. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz has choked off 20% of the world's oil and gas supplies, sending global energy prices surging. Speaking to reporters on Thursday, Trump predicted a sharp price drop once the war ends.
The gas will go down. As soon as the war's over, it'll drop like a rock. There's so much of it. It's all over the place, sitting all over the oceans of the world. And it'll go down.
Global oil prices earlier briefly hit a 4-year high of more than $126 a barrel over concerns that the conflict could lead to a prolonged crisis.
Iranians are feeling the impact of war, but economically the country may be able to endure a standoff in the Gulf for now, despite a US naval blockade on its energy exports. Tehran has largely closed the Strait of Hormuz, and Washington has blocked Iranian Gulf ports as part of a stalemate, with the US as ceasefire talks stall. But Iran has plentiful domestic supplies, steady trade with neighbors, and limited signs of state revenue losses.
Our domestic products haven't gone up in price, but most imported goods, yes, those have become more expensive, about 20 to 30% more.
The extent of economic damage from the war is hard to gauge. Reuters reported this month that Iranian officials feared new rounds of protests unless sanctions were lifted. But authorities have not rationed fuel or food, curbed bank withdrawals, or delayed state salary payments. Supermarket shelves remain full.
Well, I think that they have calculated a longer runway than I think economists or Western policymakers are anticipating.
Sanam Vakil is the head of the Middle East program at Chatham House in London. She said she anticipated a double-digit drop in Iran's GDP this year, but its currency, the rial, is not far off pre-war value. She added Tehran has developed a resistance economy, relying on its neighbours for trade.
Iran is trying to send goods north over the Caspian Sea to Central Asia. And its oil is now also traversing over land routes as well. So these are the sort of temporary workarounds that are currently in place.
Energy analysts believe Iran may be able to go another 2 months before curbing oil production. Kepler's lead agricultural commodities analyst Ishan Banu says Iran has a lot of domestic agricultural production and a port in operation.
The few vessels that were going to Iran are now going to the port of Chabahar on Iran's eastern coast near the border with Pakistan. This port is outside the Middle East Gulf.
Still, on the streets of Tehran, the economic pain is intense. Some Iranian businesses have been crushed by high prices, supply chain disruption, and the internet blackout.
If things continue like this, it will definitely get worse if we carry on under the same conditions we have now.
To avert the impending economic disaster, Vakil at Chatham House says Iran would need to include sanctions relief in any deal with Washington.
So the prices today have hit a
Well, why should I, look, why shouldn't I? Italy has not been of any help to us, and Spain has been horrible, absolutely horrible, but we didn't need the help. And to a certain extent, I asked them, I didn't need the help, but I said, yeah, we'd love to have your help, because I wanted to see if they do it. And they, in all cases, they said, we don't want to get involved. And, the amazing thing is they use the Strait of Hormuz, we don't. We don't use it, we don't need it. We have a lot of oil.
The head of Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital, Mohammed Abu Salmiya, is one of hundreds of doctors detained by Israel during its 2-year assault on Hamas and the enclave. He says he was handcuffed, blindfolded, stripped naked, and subjected to a humiliating search. Involved insults with sand thrown on my head, putting dirt into my mouth, and severe beatings, he says. Abu Salmiya was released by Israeli forces, but around 60 healthcare workers remain in detention, including doctors represented by Physicians for Human Rights Israel. The group petitioned Israel's Supreme Court on Thursday, demanding the immediate release of 14 Palestinian doctors from Gaza, who have been held without charge for more than a year. It has also accused some Gaza health workers, including doctors, of having links to the militant group. Abbas added that the detained doctors had complained of being infected with scabies and that they were denied treatment. Israel's prison service told Reuters it rejected all allegations that the doctors had been mistreated in prison. Hussam Abu Safiya is the most prominent of the doctors still being held. His arrest from a northern Gaza hospital in late 2024 drew international condemnation. His brother, Muafak, says he was informed by their lawyer that he had lost £88 while in prison. He says he has suffered 4 fractured ribs. With many other ingredients imported from afar.
Yeah, our food cost is up, our overall business level is down, and we just have to keep going.
Chef Calvin Chung of Jun's Dubai told Reuters he uses seafood from Norway and Japan. Air freight rates have risen by as much as 70%. Finding alternative routes to transport hard to source perishable ingredients has been challenging.
These sort of things were very difficult because they're not only difficult to source already, but they're time sensitive. So facing these constraints where they would have to find alternate routes and all these sort of things, it made it very difficult.
Dubai has established itself as a global tourism and fine dining hub. It welcomed 19.6 million international visitors in 2025, up 5% from the previous year. With average hotel occupancy of 80%, the UAE imports more than 80% of its food for consumption, according to the International Monetary Fund. Food writer Courtney Brandt says the conflict has intensified structural vulnerabilities.
We're due for a correction. There is a lot of choice in this town. That's a sign of, a lot of good things, but also maybe it was time to just have a little tapering.
The Dubai Department of Economy and Tourism said in a statement, some operators were navigating a period of disrupted footfall and were finding creative ways to respond. Partnerships with supermarkets
6% to a session low. It wasn't immediately clear what was behind Friday's move, but analysts said after Thursday the market was on edge. Tokyo's ramped up rhetoric came as the yen stays under pressure from wide US